Hey, welcome to Spare Parts Garage. I want to talk to you today about my plans for the Spork. You've seen us pull it off the trailer and run through a fairly close inspection. As you've seen, the Spork is not without its problems. It does have a few dings and dents, and the floor pan had some rusty surprises for me. But I'm going to learn a new skill, and at the end of the day, it's going to be covered up with carpet, so I'm not terribly worried about it. So what about goals for the Spork? What's the finished product going to be? I have 4 major categories. It's got to rank high in all 4. I want it to be reliable, fast, comfortable, and agile. I want to be able to comfortably cruise in this car all over the United States. I'd like to make it to Cruising the Coast 23 if possible. Maybe something like Drag Week or Power Tour. Any of the long distance cruises. So it's got to be very reliable. I certainly want it to be fast, so I'm going to keep the turbo setup on it for sure. And it's also got to be comfortable. I just really want it to be a nice looking cruiser with good fit and finish. I'm pulling a lot of parts for this project off of the Phoenix. I've already pulled the drivetrain. It's a 5.3 LS engine with a sloppy stage 2 cam and packed 1218 springs, as well as a stock 4L80E transmission and a Circle D converter. I just dropped the 8.5-inch Grand National Posi traction rear end out of it, and I still have a few more parts to pull off. Mike and I are going to push the Spork in the garage to drop its rear end and swap it for the Grand National rear end here pretty quick. So for the front suspension, again, I want it to handle nice, I want it to go around corners, so I'm not going to use the stock stamped steel arms. I've already purchased some tubular A-arms, and I'm also going to use some coilover shocks up front. This will allow me to adjust the ride height and get that just like I want it. Nothing sets off a hot rod like the ride stance. I'm going to go ahead and use the wheels and tires that are on the Phoenix right now. I'm pretty pleased with those, so they're going to stay on board. I have purchased the parts for the C5 brake upgrade, including the calipers and brackets. I'm using the stock rotors for my C6. They were the same size as the C5s. Currently, it's got drum brakes out back. I'm not sure how to take care of the emergency brake setup with the C5 disc brake upgrade. I've already purchased the brackets to fit it to this rear end, and once I figure out how to take care of the emergency brake issue, I'll go ahead and make that upgrade. Until then, it's got all new hardware for those brakes, so I'm just going to run it for the time being. As I said, the rear end is from a Grand National. It's an 8.5-inch Posi track with the 342 gear. I replaced the axles when I dropped it into the 82, and I also upgraded the control arms with UMI units, both upper and lower. They have polyurethane bushings, so all will be ready to go. The turbo hot side setup I'm going to use is the Holley Hooker turbo log manifold for the LS motor. I cobbled together my own turbo hot side for the 82 and had run the crossover in front of the engine. That really brought a lot of heat inside the engine bay that I'd really like to avoid this go round. So with the Hooker setup, the cross pipe goes down, back, and under the transmission and back up the other side. So hopefully it will help keep some of that heat out of the engine bay. It's a nice clean setup, but it's not known for being terribly efficient. But of course what I cobbled together wasn't terribly efficient either, so it's certainly going to be an upgrade. I'm going to run the 7875 turbo that I bought from VS Racing, along with his intercooler and wastegates. As far as fuel, I'll run a Racetronics Walbro 450 setup. I'm a little concerned because the El Camino tank is slightly different designed. I am hoping that I don't have to modify the fuel pump setup that I have, but if I do, I do. I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. I am using the Holley Terminator X setup for a harness and computer. I pulled it out of the old car, and I've got a couple of grounds that I need to put some new rings on, but everything else is in pretty good shape there. Okay, so as far as order of operations, what I plan to do after we switch out the rear end is to push the Buick out of the garage. I'll sell the Buick as a roller to free up a little bit of space, and then I will start working on the Spork's floor pan. I've never done this before. I purchased a full pan and I plan to take my time. I'm going to cut out the rusty parts and use those as templates to cut out patches, and then I will use my little Lincoln 110 welder to weld it all in. After I get all of that done, I will start working on the front suspension. I plan to remove the entire front end, core support, front fenders, the entire thing. Then I'll clean up the frame, detail everything, get it painted, smoothed out, and have all the room I need to install the drivetrain without doing any damage to the firewall. After all of that, I will start working on paint and body. I plan to do all of that myself with the help of an experienced neighbor. Lastly, I will start to work on the interior. I've already bought some leather Corbeau seats. I found a guy that had some for sale that he intended to put in his C4 project, but he never used them, so I got them at a pretty nice discount, so I'm very pleased with that purchase. As far as time frame, I would love to be able to take it to Cruising the Coast 23 next October. We're now sitting at the end of November, so that doesn't leave a whole lot of time, and of course I've got a long list here. So I'd like it to be done by then, but if it's not done, it's not the end of the world. So if you would like to see how the Spork progresses, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and maybe even the bell so you know when I put up a new video. I'm looking forward to this one. I think it's going to be the nicest hot rod that I've ever put together, so follow along and see how it goes.